Up From Work podcast. My name's Dave Swillum. Let's get ready to hustle.
All right, welcome back to the Waking Up From Work podcast. You're listening to episode 86 tonight, pre-Thanksgiving on 2020, which is, I'm sure, an interesting year for everyone to have Thanksgiving. So I hope that you're finding something in your plans right now to hang out for this week and do what you got to do. But because of that, thank you guys for everyone that's hanging out right now. You can tell by last week, this week, and I'm sure throughout December, my schedule is just funky and our guest schedules are funky, and this is just like the wave that we're riding here to make sure that we're still out weekly. So thank you everyone for hanging out. You're listening to episode 86 tonight of the podcast, about a month into me moving up here. I didn't even tell you that, Ryan. I moved up. I'm from New Hampshire. I moved up to this area, dude. So about a month of me moving up into the Portland area here, and I'm kind of going on like a spree here of like being like, oh yeah, I could have always talked to a bunch of cool people from Portland, but on Zoom and everything, because I have been, but now I'm here. So like, why didn't I do that? So now I'm here doing that. So I'd like to introduce Ryan Adams. You may know him as Ryan Writes on Things from the Portland area here. Welcome, Ryan. Thank you for being on, man.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
That face was good, dude. Whatever face you just made when you did this.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I think that's the like post dinner mid drink. Like kinda.
I liked it, man. It was really surveying the Instagram crowd. It was like it was with it, man.
Awesome. Glad that worked. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. So for those that haven't been keeping up with him, first of all, definitely follow him on Instagram because he posts a lot of his stuff, or if not all of it, on there, and it's crazy awesome stuff. But he is a artist, a muralist, and I just say artist, man, because you're just like it could be on the side of a beer can, it could be on a wall, it could be in signage, it could be you're whenever I like introduce people that may be specific on like maybe the medium that it's delivered on, it's like I never really say like a straight up muralist, because you're an artist at the core, and I feel like if the right opportunity or the right thing that struck you, your art would just go wherever it needs to go to still keep delivering whatever it is that you do. So Ryan Writes on Things is an artist here that we have today. So
yeah, thank you. That's very accurate. You know, I mean, I think I kind of just, because it feels good, or I guess it's easier to digest if you're in a certain lane. So I normally say,
yeah,
artist, muralist, painter, sign painter, designer, like essentially just creator. You know, I like to make things, and fortunately enough, it's my full-time profession now. So
hell yeah,
dude, that's accurate. You know, Ryan Writes on Things, whatever I can. Put my signature on, I will.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's legit why, like I was telling you earlier, I have an artist, a musician and recording background. That's like my day-to-day love and bread and butter. But I specifically made this podcast not only about that thing, because like every creator that I've ever met, and now we're on episode 86, everyone has like the same things to offer. Like it doesn't matter. Like I get so many ideas from every type of artist and business owner because they just have the same ideas. They're just expressing it through different energies and stuff. It's weird, you know?
Absolutely. And it's great to vibe off that too. You know, I think that's super important to staying creative, is to talk to other people, you know, that are kind of in that same mindset and kind of trying to figure out how to express ourselves with the kind of creative tools that we have. I get like super inspired off of talking to people from all different walks of the artistic or creative world.
Hell yeah.
How they go about getting from, you know, idea to finished product. So yeah, that's super important.
That process is like sometimes like the most impactful for me to like understand why how did you're like, how did you come up with that like specific piece, and like have people talk through it? Sometimes you're like, that's totally not what I was thinking in my head of like how you came up with that idea. That's crazy as hell, you know?
Oh, for sure. Like, I think, so, I mean, my background was in kind of traditional graffiti writing. And
yeah, real quick, because I'll spin off, dude.
Oh yeah,
I'll let you just be like, I was
gonna go into,
yeah, totally bring people through that. I'm sorry, guys. I'm getting all like jacked up and pumped up right now, where I already want to just like pick at them and like ask them questions. Ryan, do you want to walk through people like more than like my 2 seconds of like introducing you? Like, what are you about, man? And what do you do more than what I said? Because you were about to explain it, and people definitely need that if they haven't met you.
Oh, for sure. Okay, yeah, cool. So Ryan writes on things, as we kind of already covered. But my background, kind of in art, or I guess in that world, was in graffiti. So I started off as a graffiti writer. I mean, that's kind of where my love for kind of bright colors, letters, creating all was kind of formed. So I mean, as a kid, actually, I received a copy of Subway Art, which was a book that chronicled the 70s and 80s subway graffiti movement in New York City.
Cool.
And it just like totally blew my mind. I was, I'm born and raised here in Portland, so I didn't see a lot of that. Like growing up, I was just kind of like, whoa, what is this? And I was also very young when I received the book. So, I mean, from that point on, it was like searching it out. It was like,
how did that come into play, that book?
An after-school teacher of mine, Erin Leon was her name. Shout out Erin. She was from Atlantic City, I believe, and was just like doing an after-school program up here, and ended up being like, hey, like you seem to be like, kind of little hip hop kid. Like, have you ever seen this before? And it was just like, like I just
immediately
danger. So ever since then, I was kind of like seeking out how this happened, where it happened, like anything I could grasp, because this is pre-internet days. I couldn't just like type it into a search engine.
Yeah.
So I ended up like kind of collecting magazines. And then once I got old enough to kind of meander on my own, it was kind of finding these locations like where graffiti would happen, because graffiti was happening here in Portland at the time. So kind of being in places I probably shouldn't have been as a young person, as a little kid. But I ended up just kind of seeking it out, and then just being like, how is this happening? Like, and from then on, it was just kind of like this strange obsession as to like, who does it? How does it work? How are they doing this with spray paint? Like, it was just so many unanswered questions that I just kind of grasped onto it. And I kind of studied as much as I could. The whole time, I mean, I wasn't really going out and being active painting graffiti until I was later in my teens. But there's a period of time where I was just kind of trying to study it and understand as much as I could with the books and magazines that I had access to.
Yeah.
And then later in my teens, I started kind of becoming active and going out there and giving it a shot, and being absolutely terrible and making a total mess out of a lot of things that I feel really bad about as an adult. but it was a learning process, and you just kind of publicly suck really bad at something for a while, and you just kind of grate your teeth through it and try to get better. So that's kind of where things started. And from there, I mean, it was just, once I started painting, I just wanted to get better so badly that I just, like, once again, like I said, kind of this obsession over it, just like thinking about it all the time. Like, just so many sketchbooks drawn in, so many just places where I could paint, like just so many rounds and rounds of trying to figure it out. And through
it totally hit you, dude.
What's that?
It like caught you. Like once that like hit, you're like, this is the only thing I care about. Like I need to do this. Absolutely.
Yeah. And like at that age too, there's like not too much else going on, you know what I mean? Like, there's like school, there's, social life, but then it's like, if something grabs you like that, it's kind of like just all encompassing. And that's exactly what happened. So, through trying to get better at graffiti writing, there's sort of like I don't want to say like a traditional apprenticeship, but if you're lucky enough to find an older graffiti writer or somebody, because like I said, pre-internet. So, internet was barely a part of it, at this point. But if you were lucky enough to find someone that knew what they were doing or had got good at what they were doing, it was kind of like a step by step of how you get better. And the first thing that you learn is like very basic letter forms. Like you can't learn how to bend and extend and do all types of wild things with letters until you understand the basic structure. And that was a part that really also caught me. So when I was learning that through doing graffiti, I was like, whoa, there's a lot of parts to building letters that are way more difficult than I thought, like, and I kind of got into the, I guess kind of like hand lettering and text design and things like that, where I was a little more it kind of widened my, I guess my interest a bit, to where I was like, okay, so there's a lot more to do with letters that really kind of grabs me. So that's kind of where that started. And then, it was just painting graffiti for years. And then all of a sudden I got this opportunity to do a paid commission for a business that it had initially burnt down. Binga's, it was up here. They still have a spot. Binga's, like wings, they're delicious, but they had a spot on Congress that burnt down.
Okay.
And I was like, I think I've told this story before, but I was like, I'm going to paint it. It's a good spot. So I reached out to somebody who worked there and knew somebody, and they were like, the owner said it's fine. And I was like, cool.
On the side of the building, outside or inside for the business?
Outside, because it was all boarded up. It had burnt down at the time. So I painted it, did a big graffiti piece, and just kind of wrote like, oh, we miss you, Bingas, kind of Jamaican jerk, kind of things like that on there. And the owners of the company were like, hey, listen, we want to find out who that is, and we want to pay them to do our new interior of our new space.
Awesome.
I was like, whoa. At first I was
I didn't know that was an option, basically, right?
No idea.
Because it hasn't happened yet. And the first one you're doing, you're like, I see this like burned up building where like, hopefully people aren't going to get mad at me, and I want to do that. So like you saw an opportunity, and then they're like, no, but like, this is sick. We just want it on the building that we're going to now be in, which is over here. Basically.
Yeah. It was it was kind of like, I don't know. I mean, when I talk about it to people, it's kind of like this weird, because at the same, there's like, now being older, it's like, I don't advocate for illegal activity. It's not what I'm going to do. But at the same time, like, I saw something, I wanted it, and I went and got it. And through that, it just happened to work out that the folks were like, hey, we love this. That's not how, that could have gone many different directions, but that's the way that it went. And so the next thing I knew, I was like in a meeting room with like architects and designers and owners and, kind of people working on build outs. And that was the first time I was like, whoa, like this is a thing. Like this work that I've kind of like dedicated my life to, that I felt, graffiti's not appreciated by 99.5% of the people out there. So it's like, I didn't think anyone cared about this or appreciated it at all. Yet here I am in a situation where people are, going to commission me for my work in this space.
Big deal, dude. Total different perception of like, not only like had you not like even gotten to do some of those bigger works that you wanted to because like you just didn't have a space to do it or whatever. So like you're in your book in here, and like by now, like I don't know how much time, because I don't think you said the amount of time that's passed at this point, but I imagine it seems like a good amount of time where you were younger and got like kind of stricken with this like right away. Then you're like in this book working in this, like still like really about it. Then you finally get this piece where you're like, now I get to finally put this out. That's just like the size and like the project like type that I want to do essentially. Now you even graduate past that where someone's like, they're not only valuing the work, but they're like, I want to pay you to have this brand my business, which is like a baby for me. And you're like, holy shit. Like I didn't realize realize that this could be that essentially until I got to do this. And like, now we're here and this is crazy.
Yeah, you nailed it. And that's just nuts, I guess when I'm thinking about the amount of time that passed there, I think it was probably like 6-7 years, probably like 7 years of like
Sure.
You know, from actually starting to really take painting graffiti seriously to being at this point.
That's time, man.
So yeah, I mean, there was a lot of time and hours put into that prior to even getting this first shot. And I mean, shout to them because they gave me that first shot, and it just completely rewired the way that I was thinking. You know what I mean? Because I genuinely thought that this was something that no one cared about. Like, no one cared about the work that I was doing. You know, you're kind of pouring your heart and soul into something, and the general public just doesn't give a shit. So you just kind of become okay with that. And then this opportunity totally flipped that for me, and was like, oh, wait a second. I have a skill that is useful for other businesses, and that I can use to, I guess, kind of progress and make money and kind of, you know, like progress in my work and make money. So yeah, that was kind of like a huge game changer. After that happened, it was pretty much like, I mean, like I said, it kind of rewired the way I was thinking. And from then on out, it was just like, okay, like it was
I'm going to do this now.
Yeah, it was like you do one, and then somebody else sees that, or like another business owner is like, hey, who did that? That's unique. You know, that's not like the cookie cutter, you know, wallpaper that everyone has. Like, that's unique to this space. Who did that? And like, I get another opportunity, and then it's kind of same thing. Another owner, or somebody else who, you know, has some connection to another business, sees a unique piece in that place, and kind of it just. That's honestly it. Luckily, knock on wood, it hasn't stopped since then, and only kind of grown. And like, I guess kind of an offshoot from there, I kind of spoke to it a little bit earlier, was kind of with the graffiti and like kind of studying letter forms, like kind of the letter nerd side of me kind of started. So that's when I linked up with one of my good friends and now business partner, Will Sears, who was already like a sign painter and kind of teaching himself how to paint signs and going through the motions there. And he was kind enough to just kind of let me tag along, help out on a few things, and then showed me kind of how to care for brushes and how to create, manufacture, and, you know, make signs and, you know, work on, I mean, because sign painting is a totally different side of the brain. It's a totally different structure. Yeah. So he really helped me out there with kind of bringing me into that world. And as with graffiti, as soon as I got a little like taste of it, it was like grasped on, you know. It was like, okay, here's another thing I'm going to obsess over.
And you already had like this obsession with like, how do I create like letters and fonts and things like in a way that means something. So it's like you already have like the stew there to like then grab a hold of that too.
Yeah. It's weird how they kind of like feed each other and how they're so similar. But yeah, that kind of became its own lane within itself. So then there's a sign painting business. You have Better Letter, which, you know, shout out to the team I own with Will Sears and Tess O'Brien and my wife, Rachel. But yeah, so sign painting became a thing. Murals became a thing. And then with murals and spray paint, I started to kind of try to do more than just letters. So it became kind of more trying to mix some more realism and some more kind of design elements because, you know, I still have just as much fun spray painting a wall today as I did when I was 17 years old. So like, I always want to learn more. So that's when kind of like the portraiture and those type of things have come into play with kind of the arsenal, or I guess like the type of work I can do. And that's pretty much where we are today. Kind of that's how we added the things on. And now it's kind of this one package where I'm able to kind of create things in different lanes and different places for a living.
Randomly go do like a huge project down in Maryland.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
How did that project come out? I just took a look at the pictures today. You told me about it when we were getting into scheduling. And then like, I remember you had told me about it and I kind of forgot a little bit because I got like swooped back into stuff. I was like, okay, I'm going to hit him up later. And then today when we were getting ready to be on tonight, I looked back at your Instagram and I saw like the size of that project. And then I was like, oh, well, that makes sense because he said he was going down to Maryland for like a month or something like that. And I was like, oh yeah, this thing's massive. But like, is that just like, was that just people seeing your art on social or around here, or like a connection that moved out that way, or that you had known in there? Like, how did that happen, man? Because it seems like they're just like you're talking about the different lanes that are growing and spider webbing out, and that's obviously it picks up momentum. But what happened with that project? Was that like one of your bigger ones? Like,
absolutely, that was the largest to date.
Big,
actually.
man.
I mean, the size was just. It was a big one. It was definitely a big one. That came about through Mural Arts Co., which is a company run by some guys that I've known for years. It was actually through kind of like Graffiti World connection. That's kind of another thing, is that like, you know, a lot of you know, people that wrote graffiti when they were younger ended up either in the design or, you know, mural world. I mean, it's kind of an easy transition.
Yeah.
So these are guys I've known for a few years, and they ended up starting this company that's wonderful. Like I mean, I guess I don't know if they are consider a broker, but they pretty much like, you know, companies or towns or places that are looking for, you know, really good work. They line them up with the right artists, and they kind of have like a cachet, I guess, of artists that they work with. And I happen to be one of them. And this project came up. So the city of Towson, Maryland, sent out RFP for, it was a national RFP, and I think there was like 42 artists that applied nationally, and Mural Arts Co. me in. They were like, hey, listen, we think this would be a good one for you.
Yeah.
You want to put in a proposal? I was like, sure, whatever. And this was probably like a year ago at this point.
Wow.
And I was just like, yeah, sure, you know, like, and it was one of those things that like I did the proposal. Sorry, y'all. I did it in like I did it like a night. Like the first one, it wasn't the final piece, but the first one I was just kind of like, oh yeah, cool. Like we'll throw something in, and like threw it in, and then it was like a couple months later, they're like, hey, you've progressed to like the top 10. Can you refine it? And I was like, oh wow, okay, like cool. Let's give that a shot. That's when I really kind of like made it, you know, really refined it and made it kind of what it is. And then I was just finishing up another job of, you know, during the summertime, and they're like, hey dude, they want you to do it. So it was nuts. It was wild.
That's crazy, man.
So
and it's like,
to kind of describe it, it's 6 different panels, all starting 10 feet off the ground, and they're in the geometric gem style that I do. And it's sort of like a gradient that moves across across the 6.
Sure.
Each one has a word in there because it's on their public library. So each one has a word in there that kind of came to mind when thinking about a library. So it was all brush and all roller, and huge shout out to B. Daniel, who is like my ace, one of my favorite humans on the planet. B rolled down there with me, and they helped me with this entire project. And also a few folks that are also lined up with Mural Arts Co. down there came and helped out. But it was a beast of a project, and we knocked that entire thing out in 11 days.
Wow.
It was 14 days, 2 on the road, 1 rain day, and then 11 days of just like
killing it.
Sleep.
Killing it, dude. Absolutely killing it. That's no joke, man. That's no joke.
It was wild. It's pretty much like the size of a city block. It was a huge honor to be able to do that for him.
Unreal.
Yeah.
And what's sweet about it, man, like obviously, like, I think I did tell you, it was way later on when we were chatting. He, I think, is watching. Yeah, he is. Dirkish Delights. I interviewed Mike Dirkish Delights on this podcast, and he had mentioned you because he does awesome murals and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
And he mentioned something about you, just like in passing, about something that you had said that had made an impact on him. And then you just stuck in my head to remember when I checked out your work after that. But then I've worked through the Portland area for some time.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I had seen some art like every once in a while, and I was like, hey, that's sick. Like, that's like sweet. Like I love having that around. Right. And I ran into more and more of it. And then I got more into your stuff, and I was like, oh shit. Like, some of that's a lot of it is your stuff. And I just been like passing it and stuff. And it's like, what is so cool about street art and mural art and things like that, past even the branding and the entity behind these brands that you support, because that's a thing in itself, is for that town. I mean, for that town with that amount of space, or like even all these parts of Portland that like you listed out the addresses for me one day, because I was like, dude, I want to go and like do a drive through, and I didn't do all of it yet. I didn't do all that yet, but I want to do a day where like I hit all of it in like the same time, so I like bring it in, you know?
Damn, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I can drive around, dude, you know? But but what I'm getting at with that is just that what must be such a cool feeling for you is to know that, I mean, God knows how many years are going to pass, man. That art is going to be a part of those cities and towns. Like, it doesn't make sense to like to put things over that art. Like, that is a piece of that building. And you see crap like right now at this property, I have an 1850s barn that's still here, and I found some 1910 newspapers in this friggin' barn. There's stuff, if it's good stuff, it stays around for way past like the creators sometimes. That's got to feel so cool to put that thumbprint on stuff and while you're around, like just put that thumbprint around the world, dude.
Oh, for sure. It's an honor. You know what I mean?
Not to go too like headspace on it, but I think about that all the time.
Oh, for sure. For sure. It's an absolute honor to have people that, or, you know, just like people in the community or businesses in the community that have that trust, in my work and what I do. That's huge. And I definitely don't take that lightly. I think that's, I can only hope that some of these things kind of outlast me. I think that's one of the things that kind of came along and when getting into sign painting and graffiti too, but more or less in sign painting, is that sometimes you catch a sign that was painted in the 50s or like in the, you know, in the 60s, and it's still running, it's still there. Yeah. And there's a human hand behind that thought of that design, that layout, worked on that and created that for that space. And that's like an amazing thing to me, to kind of have a legacy in that sense.
And it catches people, and it makes little micro interactions that happen like when you're not around, or I bet you when you're done, or like other times when you're in the area and you sit there, you'll watch people just get like micro affected. Even if it's like really quick, they're like walking, they're like, whoa, that's really cool. But like, it's becoming little pieces of people's days, like constantly in every single spot that you're planting like the little seeds out there. And that's crazy to think of a piece of your mind, your story imprints out in little micro ways like that, with how people are even really understanding, is kind of a cool piece of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, I take that very seriously, because you are affecting a person's environment. I mean, I know that, I mean, if I'm fortunate enough, I mean, I guess if all goes well, and what I hope for is that it affects them in a positive way, you know, and that it helps people out. And like one of the things I love the most about painting in public is watching people interact with the piece or interact with each other about the piece. It's like you'll see two people that might live in the neighborhood that would never ever talk. Like they just walk by each other every single day, and they might have a moment where they're both kind of looking at this like, oh, this is new. Like, and then you'll see people kind of have a conversation. That sort of thing to me is like, I don't know, like it's just the best part, because to me, there's not too many positive things that I think can get two strangers that walking down the street to come together and have a discussion, especially about art. You know what I mean? Like it's rare, at least in my experiences. So when I see that happen, it's just kind of like, oh my gosh, you know, like, it's wonderful. It's amazing, you know, and that's kind of a driver behind why I still continue to do it.
I bet, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty, I mean, there's levels to it too, because there's also at the same time the personal side of it. My wife made fun of me one time because we were driving around and I was like, oh, nice, that sign's still running. Oh, cool. All right, that piece is still running. Like, and she's just like, is this just an extension of your like graffiti kid? Like, I still got that spot. Like, you know, it might be like, there is kind of still the personal side of it, but I also understand that there's so much more happening with
someone didn't come by and tag back on your sign. You're like, I was just there last week. I can't believe he got there. Are you serious?
Yeah, dude, it's funny. There's like I said, there's levels to it. So I mean, I really enjoy doing it a lot, and I feel like I said, I've said it many times, but it's an honor to be able to do this and to have the trust from the community that I have. Very special.
It's awesome, man. And I mean, Portland's such an awesome area. Like
sure.
The culture here is so good. It's like definitely it plays in perfect with it. One thing I want to ask, because I think I've got two things that I definitely wanted to hit with you.
Cool.
One dates back to Mike's conversation with me that hit me in the first place about something that you said that we talk about a lot on the podcast. And that was, you had said to him, this had made an impact for him before it hit me. And it was, you were talking to him about like, enjoy the process before you're full time, essentially. Like enjoy this thing that's happening right now. And Mike Durkee is full time and he's killing it too. But like, I think you might have hit him before then or something, but you said enjoy the process of doing these things that you're doing right now, going after full time, because when you're full time, it's awesome. But like this part of the process is awesome too. And you need to enjoy that while you're there. Cause sometimes you like are just so you're so in the future of like, how do I get to this thing? And it's so constant that you're like not paying attention to like the really crazy, awesome shit that's happening every day right now with you working towards it. How exciting that is that look at all of the stuff that you've made move, man. Like what do you think on that concept that might've hit him when you said that?
Yeah. So that was actually advice that was kicked down to me from my good friend and huge inspiration, Matt Moore. If anyone out there is listening, check him out. MWM Graphics. He's like the best. I mean, in my opinion, like he's just one of the most talented humans on the planet. And he's been a huge inspiration to me, a good friend for years. And right when I was getting ready to make the transition over to full-time on the creative side, because I worked a corporate job, I mean, for a decade, like a very stressful, fast-paced corporate job for a decade prior to making this full-time.
Sure.
And I was talking to him about it, you know, same as what you were saying, how I was thinking 10 steps ahead. Like, okay, but then I need to lock this down, and then I need to figure out how to get my stuff out there, and this and the third. And dude was just kind of like, listen, you need to enjoy this moment right now, because this is only going to happen once. You getting ready to make this transition over to full time, you having all this energy, all this drive, all this determination to absolutely make it happen. He's like, this feeling happens one time. Wow. So you need to like bask in it, like just enjoy it. Like plan ahead, you know, no one should, you know, like you should definitely have a plan.
This is a hard thing to do. You should work at it. But
like, you will never have this sort of drive. Like, I mean, hopefully you'll always have a driver. You'll always have something that's pushing you to improve and to work hard, the whole nine. But there's something about before you take that leap that is like, so it's just like, it's a feeling that I can't really explain. It's terrifying on every front. It's super exciting. It's like, am I finally here? Maybe not. And like, there's just something that's so just like powerful about that moment. And he really helped me kind of grasp that, because like I said, I was thinking 10 steps ahead.
Yeah.
And I wasn't like, oh, wait a second. Okay. Like, you really have to harness this, and you really have to hold on to this and kind of take this and push that energy out and just enjoy it. And just, yeah. Cause I mean, it's very easy to just be scared, be terrified, and let all the emotions kind of like, I guess, kind of keep you thinking past where you are, but just kind of living in it and being in that energy filled moment and just kind of like grasping it. That was huge. I mean, that dude's blessed me with so many gems over the years, but that one was huge. That one was very, very helpful. And I'm glad I was able to kick that over too.
You did,
so
dude. You did.
Yeah.
You took
I'm
that.
glad we'll keep that one moving because that's very important.
You did, man. You totally did. You sent it to Mike, and then he hit me with it, and like I was starting to, like, I don't know if it's mature or if it's just like I've been in the hustle for long enough that like moving way up that line of like being at it long enough and seeing that to like give it back to myself. But it hit me at the right time too, and I was like, and I thought about it, and then we brought it out to the audience here, and we're blowing up the concept here again. So
awesome.
I think it's like the longer I've been in the game, the more important I think it is, because of exactly what you said. Like, first of all, like, you have to give yourself like credit on some of that stuff, because sometimes you're like, you're working so hard at it, you're planning, and you're so fixated, just like you were saying, like once you got like hit with your like, this is the thing that I have to do, and then like you get validation of like, oh, this is the thing that I can do. Game over. Like, I'm gonna do it. Like that. Once you like are that person or that mindset, and like it's gonna happen, then all of a sudden it's just like a series of like these things to like make it happen. And sometimes you need to like step, and I was telling this to my wife, like sometimes you need to step back and be like, we're doing some weird shit right now. We're doing some crazy shit. And like, we like to not think that it's crazy because like we're doing it every day, and then you're like, this is normal, and like, you're not doing enough, and like, blah, blah, blah. And then like, you look around, you're like, no, we're doing some weird shit to accomplish this. And like, we should be proud because like, it's fucking weird, dude. Like,
dude, it's
not an easy thing to do.
That is so real, dude. Like, it's, you know, when you kind of like leave the beaten path and you kind of choose something that's left, you know, and something that doesn't have a manual or like, I guess, a step-by-step or telling you how to succeed, and you're really figuring out as you go, like it can be nuts. Like my wife and I talk,
but it doesn't feel it when you're living it. You know, like you don't give that to yourself. Sometimes you're like, yeah, today we got to go do this thing, and I got to drive 12. I got to drive 12 hours. I'll be there for like 2 hours, and then I'll sleep on this plane, and then like this person will be, and then you're like you're saying it, and you're like, this is the plan. Like this is the thing that has to. This is on my calendar today, and then like someone's like, what's up? And you're like, oh, I need to give myself something, dude. Like that was weird and hard.
That's so real. I had that moment with my wife, like actually when she came down to visit me in Baltimore when I was working on that project, and she actually within this year has created and launched Tachi, which is a line of fabric or textile designs and kids clothing. So like,
no way.
Like, I want to say she started this in like February, and by October, she had this fully functioning company with like just all the designs, all like everything, like the whole manufacturing setup already. And like, we were driving in Baltimore, you know, I'm in the middle of crazy. I mean, it's probably like 11 o'clock at night, you know, because I'm finally off the wall. And we're like driving back to the hotel, and I'm like, have you taken a second to kind of like recognize what you accomplished right now? Like, because that's insane. But we're so, like you said, okay, got to be here, got to do this. I'm going to be away for these days. Boom. Okay, got to grab the kids, got to da-da-da. That you don't take a second to step back and be like, whoa, you created this entire thing during COVID with a full-time job and kids. like you got to step back and be like, hey, listen, you know, like, you got to take those moments. You really do.
Oh my God, dude.
Yeah.
Cheers to her, man. I'm gonna check that out. I'll have to check out what that brand she created.
Oh, for sure. Please do. She's 10 times more talented and driven than I. I mean, that woman, I'm hands down. She's the brains of this operation. You know, she's a pro.
That's nuts, man. Yeah, and for those out there that maybe not on Instagram, or maybe on Instagram, but anyone that's listening to the podcast on the Tuesday where this comes out, so not tomorrow, but the week after that, I will put that, Ryan, in the show notes. I'll put her brand in here too, so people can go check it out.
That would be wonderful.
Because that's sweet.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Cool, man. That was a good explanation of that.
Yeah. Like as you kind of get so like either it's weird because it's like you're always thinking a few steps ahead, but at the same time, it's about the task that day. So you're kind of head down running, but
Yep.
knowing there's a goal on the end of that. Then you hit the goal and you're like, okay, cool. And then you keep going.
Yeah.
But you kind of need to, so be like, wait a minute, we accomplished that. Like,
You're like, wait,
okay.
that was back there though.
Yeah.
You're like, oh yeah,
Exactly.
no, that was wild as hell. And you're like, you acted normal though that day.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah.
Exactly.
Or like
Exactly.
flip side to it, I've been saying to people like when they're calling and checking in on me right now, I didn't tell you what I'm up to right here, but this property is a big step towards what I'm trying to do. But like when people are checking in, I'm not like pumped right now because I'm really stressed and scared about stuff. But like people go like, oh, like, well, did you not know? And I'm like, no, I planned this. Like I knew that this was going to happen, but I've been explaining to people that this portion for me is like telling people that you're going to hike like a big mountain. You know what I mean? Like you're talking about 4,000, I don't know my mountain terms, so don't kill me mountain people out there, but like 4,000, 5,000, like it's a big mountain. It's a big climb.
Mm-hmm.
If you're like, I don't know, like, what you're doing, like you plan the climb, like, like what you're going to wear that day because of like, it's Mount Washington, the weather changes or whatever it is. Like you plan the climb, you plan what you're going to wear, you plan everything, right? You know that it's going to be a really hard climb.
Yep.
That's different though than when you get there and you're in the parking lot and then you're looking up and you're like, holy shit, that's what we're doing today? And you're like, yeah, you knew this. Like you've climbed other mountains and like you knew that this one was like a bigger one than those. And like you remember that those kind of sucked. And like you knew all this. And then like now that you're standing next to it, you're like, oh yeah, like we are doing that. And then like it's really scary and stressful when you're there, even though you planned it. It's like that can go the opposite way too, where it's like you can plan things down to the science. You can know the math. You can have a plan. Like say you're starting a business, you can mitigate all the risk. You can do all these amazing things in it. But like at the end of the day, like you still might be doing some really scary crap too. And like you'll also feel it even if you planned it. It's just like all part of it on both sides of it, recognizing and feeling it,
Oh, for sure. For sure. There is a huge difference between planning something out and being prepared and actually starting it.
Yeah.
I just had that with the Baltimore job because I wasn't able to get down. I mean, with COVID, it's like I wasn't able to get down and do a site visit until it was time to go paint. So
wow.
I got there and saw the size of it. It was like, okay, like I had the measurements, but all right.
Exactly what I'm talking about, man.
Moment of like, okay,
we're gonna paint all this.
I feel you. Yeah.
We're doing all of this. Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, so there's, like I said, a huge difference between preparation and being ready mentally and then actually starting the job. So I totally feel you there.
So this is one that you said that someone else asked you recently. So sorry, Ryan fans out there, if you got like an answer like this, or this might have been a private conversation, dude, but I wanted to ask it here too.
Yeah.
What would you recommend to creatives going into a, full-time creative lifestyle right now, or freelance lifestyle, like someone who's trying to go in right now to do this type of thing? So like what's some, like advice that you'd give them or thoughts that you have for them? Because someone asked you this recently.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was kind of twofold. So I think if you're already at the place where, you've kind of built up enough momentum and enough work that you're about to take the leap or you're thinking about it, or if you're trying to figure out how to do that, I guess the advice that I would give is that unfortunately I haven't found out any shortcuts. It's really just busting ass and time invested. For those 10 years that I was working the corporate day gig and doing all these jobs, there's times where people are like, oh, most people didn't know that I had a full-time day job, but it was like I was working, all day long and then all evening until I had to crash. And it was a lot of times 7 days a week. There were months that would go by where I'd have a day off, you know what I mean? And things like that. So it's like, it's really time spent. Like I have yet to find a shortcut. And for most of the people I've chatted with that have kind of been in the same situation, they have the same advice. It's like, yeah, it was sleepless nights. It was, years of juggling everything in the schedule and just making it happen, carving out the time for it. Even now we do that with all the things we have going on. I put a quick video on my Instagram page of a job that my wife and I did together. It was like a Love Portland mural. And like, if you watch it, it shows a little bit of the like behind the scenes. Cause I was like, we should like get some of these shots on video sometimes, because honestly, I'll have one kid sleeping on this side, one kid like hanging off this side, and I'm like trying to doodle on the iPad while Rachel's finishing up something that's due, that night. So it's like,
God bless you, man.
It's like, you have to just carve the time out and just make it happen. So that was kind of the advice I had for people kind of thinking about that. And then I've said too before to people that are kind of like thinking about kind of going into the creative life just in general. One of the things that I've kind of lived by is don't be afraid to suck. Like everything you start, you're going to suck at first. Like you're not going to be good when you first start anything. But once again, time spent, put in those hours, work it, and you'll get better. And I think now, especially with social media and everything, there's like way more pressure. Like I was able to suck a lot of the times under a bridge and nobody would see it. But like now it's like a lot of people that are doing things and putting them right out there. There's a lot of pressure to be like really, really good at something as soon as you start. And that's not how things work. And I think if you try to live by that and stick by that, you're going to skip steps and you're going to find shortcuts, and it's going to end up hurting you in the long run. So as another kind of the piece of advice I've always said is don't be afraid to suck at something. Work through it. Like, hopefully the hours put in, it'll pay off. So those are kind of the two, I guess, pieces of the dad advice I would give to people thinking about going towards this route.
It's good advice, man. It's like, it's advice that people like on the first portion of it, or both of them actually, both of those 2 points that you made. Anyone who's looking for the shortcut, they hate hearing what you just said. Like if they hit you up, I'm not talking about this person that hit you up recently because I don't know this person, but I'm just saying like sometimes people hit you up and they'll be like, how did you do this thing? How did this happen? And they're looking for like this cheat code or hack. And like, there's no doubt that like you've done so much murals and signs and things, like there's definitely little tricks I'm sure you have of like, whenever this thing's happened, like you got to do this thing. There's always little hacks. I'm not saying that there's not like, just like you were talking about earlier, like having a mentor, like having someone to like see, and there's nothing about that doesn't make sense. There's always little things like that. But at the end of the day, your advice is like, it will take time. It is going to be hard. It's going to be uncomfortable. There are people that aren't going to like your work. You're going to have to keep doing it. And unfortunately, probably doesn't really get that much easier because it's still like, it's just not like a given to you lifestyle. Like it doesn't matter how far. I mean, I even past people that I've interviewed on here, like I constantly want to like, I'm reading books or listening to podcasts or whatever. And all these creatives out there can be people that I completely idolize, and you'll hear them on an interview and they'll be like, yeah, man, if I'm only as good as what was happening like last month. If I don't keep trying to figure this stuff out, then like I'll disappear. And my name doesn't mean anything, even though like you think that like I'm imprinted like this. Like for me, there's huge audio engineers that I'm like, oh, everyone knows that person. You might want to assume that person just like wakes up and work flows in, and to some extent it does, to some extent for branding. But at the end of the day, like there is no easy way to just like flip on the lights, and there's no like perfect way to keep them on. Like you have to always put in the work to get that output. And then on the flip side of that, what you're saying of like, no one grows up and like when they're a baby, they just like as a kid instantly know how to peel a banana.
Yeah.
You know, they look at it and they're like, what the fuck is that thing? Like, and then they try to like get in the side or like they do all those weird techniques. And some of you crazy people out there keep those weird banana peeling techniques out there and it's ridiculous. But you're like, oh, this is the best way to peel a banana. It's like, but you don't know that until you suck at peeling a banana or someone shows you. And like at the end of the day, it's like the same way with creative. Like you either need to, someone needs to show you how to do that like word lettering or whatever technique that you're seeing, or like you need to just suck at it multiple times and then eventually you'll be like, this is now not sucking.
Get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's funny. The banana feels hilarious. I can attest to that because I got a 1-year-old, so it's very, very true.
Watching it in real time.
Yeah.
You ever like just like let it play out and like just see what happens?
Oh, of course.
You have to.
I'd be like, how is she gonna tackle
just
this?
Like take it, throw it out the window or something. You're like, right on, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Oh my God. Kids are like such like a valuable way to look at things where it's just like, how do I form the best way to do this thing like organically? And they're just trying to figure it out. You know what I mean?
Oh,
it's not
sure.
like necessarily that bias through social or like, what am I wearing today? It's just like, how do I figure this thing out the best way that I can right now?
Yep.
Unbiased.
And my kids, obviously they've changed my life in so many ways, but just seeing that like pure joy that comes from like making something or experiencing something for the first time. It's like, I see like my oldest is Zoe. She knows how to draw faces now. So it's like, she'll draw a face and like turn the page around and just be like, Dad, look. And I look at that. I'm just like, yes. All right.
Yeah.
Like, then I gotta feel that, you know what I mean? Like I should still be feeling the same way. Like these are the little pieces that you kind of forget about when you get into work zone.
Yeah.
Like it's important to remember that, you know?
Like to keep that feeling and like,
exactly.
Yeah, I just straight up created something and that's ridiculous chances that I even got to be a human being in existence to be able to do this is nuts. And I should be pumped up. Yeah.
Definitely. They help out on a lot of fronts, but that one for sure.
All right, man. So we are approaching on an hour here. And
That went quite quick.
We're just jamming. The only way that I know is I have a clock up there to hold me accountable. I promise I'm not counting down on you, man. This is a good conversation.
No worries.
But I always ask the 5 questions that I do at the end of the podcast because I ask every single person, so I kind of get like are these normal jam outs that we do like this where we can go every which way, but I always have 5 questions that I ask every person to kind of get one flavor that we can get throughout the whole thing, I guess, or get the same perspective from every person in some way, you know?
Cool.
And Instagram only lets us go live for an hour. So if we lose you because we're approaching that time, this whole thing will be out as a podcast, not tomorrow, but the week after that. You can check out Waking Up From Work podcast if you haven't checked us out before, and this will be out there if you're dying to hear the answers to these things. But thank you guys for hanging out either way. This has been a lot of fun having you. First question would be, and sometimes it's answered through the episode, but I like asking it pointed like this, would be, what makes it so that this is the thing that you wake up and do every day of your life versus any other thing that you could wake up and do on the planet? Why is this the thing that you have to do?
This sounds, I don't want this to sound like a cop out.
It can sound cop outy or cliche. Sometimes that means something, dude.
I have to do this. Like, I have to draw. I have to paint. I have to. And when I say that, I mean like, when I go a certain amount of time without doing that, I kind of become a weird person. Like I'm kind of get a little like, it's like hangry, you know what I mean? Like you're just not really the most pleasant person to be around.
Like people are walking down the street past you, and you're like,
yeah, it's just like he hasn't painted in a while. It's been something. Painting and creating and expressing myself visually has been just a part of my life for as far as I can remember. You know, even before getting obsessed with the graffiti thing, I always drew what was in my comics. I drew cartoons. I was drawing things for friends. It's just how I know how to express myself.
Yeah.
And it's also kind of my moment of meditation in a lot of ways, where it's like I'm able to kind of zone in and in so many different ways kind of either have a moment to myself or to kind of think outside of what I'm doing, if it's just kind of like the filling in motions, or just kind of like doing the visual math of figuring out what needs to go where in order to make design make sense. So it's so ingrained in who I am as a person that at this point, if I don't do it, I get weird. So this is why I had to choose this, because I was in the corporate job and I'm sitting there drawing like in between all my meetings, and it's like I have to. This is everything. This was gonna take over at some point. So I guess I didn't want to sound like a cop out.
No, and the way that you explained it out too was very good, dude. That was not a cop out at all. It would have been if you just said, you're like, because I have to.
Yeah.
Next.
All right.
Next.
Yeah.
Then I would be like, come on, man.
Explain it a little more. Yeah.
But the way you explained it out is not a cop out at all. That was totally legit. And like, I think that like this show, obviously most people here they're either small business owners or creatives or artists or musicians. And like, I think that probably most of you get that feeling. And I think like whenever you're doing some of those things that I was saying earlier, where like you recognize it and you're like, yeah, that was a weird thing that I did, or like that was like kind of ridiculous. I feel like when people ask you that do not pursue those things or would not want to do that, they ask you like, why in the hell would you do X? You're like you, whether you're taking a ridiculous risk or like you just did a ridiculous day, or you're doing the 7 days a week and you have one day off for the month or whatever it is. And you're like, I have to. I have to. It doesn't matter if I fail at this. It doesn't matter if I fail for the rest of my life trying to do this. And on my tombstone, it says, he tried to do this, even though he did that. I have to. I have to do it. I have to do it.
Absolutely.
It's all there is, man. You have to. I get it. I get the feeling.
Yeah. So that's exactly it.
I get it, dude. People get it on here, I'm sure, too. So along the way, I know that we said no shortcuts, so I'm not trying to get shortcut given to someone.
Sure, yeah.
But say you could take a lesson that you learned and give it to someone without them having to go through a certain experience or take a certain path to get there. What would you say the worst thing that you've done along the way is, or like the shittiest thing where you're like, hey, if you could learn it and really get the impact of that lesson, but not do this thing, like don't do that because it sucked.
Yeah. I mean, I can think of kind of two things. One would be get your deposit before you start working. Because that
I know that one too.
A very real thing. That's like, something you learn in the creative business. Like people will, lead you down 15, 20 revisions and then back out of a project. And
yep.
That is just like, ugh. I mean, it just takes time away from other things. It's just that I'd say is the biggest. Like get your deposit down before you start working on anything, because it's easy to get excited. It's easy. And I mean, I still do it sometimes, where I get excited about a project and I'm like, yeah, all right, we're going to get cranking on this one. This is awesome.
Yeah.
But then like I've had experiences where I've done rounds and rounds and rounds and people end up just totally backing out.
Yeah.
Or, something similar that you drew ended up in the hands of somebody who could do it for cheaper. You know what I mean? Things like that, where it's like, and these are real things. I mean, they're very real things. And I guess that was one of the things I try to talk to, like I got some younger friends that are kind of in the same world and just a few years behind me. And one of the things I try to, kind of really push to them is making sure you get things lined out, get your contracts lined out, get your, everything via email, and make sure that there's no handshake agreements and that everything's lined out. Cause at the end of the day, it is business. And when you don't have those things together, it can be pretty soul sucking and heart wrenching to put that much into something and then have it just go away or take another turn. So yeah, I would say that's probably
that's
thing.
Big, dude.
Yeah, because
and it happens to creatives more than anyone. I think we just we don't want to focus on it sometimes, and we don't want to feel that our art could lead that way. Essentially, I feel, and then we feel bad about it. Like legit, people feel bad about taking the deposit, and you're like, no, man. Like for you to do this all the time, like this is a part of it to make it so that you get to do it all the time, like so that you get to have the impact that you want to have. Like you have to make it so you keep making impact. The only way you're going to do that is if like you're doing good business. Like you just have to.
Absolutely.
You have to. And people don't always. That's the thing too, is you don't have to think of it straight up all negative on the person. Like shit just happens, dude. People get sick or they lose a job or like stuff happens just like to any one of us. Stuff just happens. All of a sudden you're like, oh shit, I shouldn't be paying for art right now, where I got to go pay for electricity or stuff just happens. And if you don't like just control where it is at in terms of the project for like how those things are handled, then like people will do things because they have to. And it's not, Absolutely. It's just all part of the process, it's all part of it.
And dude, I 100% agree. It's never really as personal as it feels. I think a lot of times just shit happens. And like, and me personally, like if I have someone's deposit and they're like, hey, listen, everything went belly up, I'm totally screwed. Like, I'll gladly be like, listen, well, I'll take the amount that I worked and give you, what I mean? It's like, you can always work something out, but it's so much easier to be in that position than it is to, get screwed totally and do a bunch of work and never get any compensation for it. So that's probably one of the biggest things that I screwed up for a long time and finally got my act together there.
Yeah. And like you said, you're like still catch yourself doing it. My wife is like she's like the I don't know, the law or something. Like I'm really good with other businesses, like looking from the outside. I'm really good at looking at the books and be like, hey, you can't do this thing, and like be like, don't do that thing. But then when it comes to my own thing, sometimes I will like, I'll be like, well, for this one project, and my wife will be like, you're taking the deposit. You said you always take deposits. You're going to do that. I was like, all right, I'm going to do that. And then I'd be like, my wife said, no, I'm just kidding.
No. But it's real though. It's real. Cause it's like, there's times where I've been working on things and Rachel just kind of looked at me like, do you get that deposit yet? I mean, I know them, but then it's like, you kind of shrink the file after.
Sometimes I feel like it's in my head too, dude. Like sometimes I think that she didn't even ever say it and she's not there, but like I picture it. And it's like late at night. I picture it and like Meg's like coming out of the corner.
Did you? Like, yeah, you're right.
Did no you do that? Like, yeah. Okay. My bad. It's in my head now.
I know all about that for sure.
All right. So other side would be, what is the best idea you've come up with along the way? Like the best thing that you've ever done or best idea you've had along the way?
Whoa. Like artistically and like career wise, right? Like,
whatever you think. Whatever you want. Sometimes they're both.
Yeah. I think the best idea was committing to myself, Like, I think there was a period of time where I was so unsure as to, like, if I was really going to be able to make this happen. And I think with the help of loved ones, my wife, and some of my best friends and people that I really trust, they really helped me kind of build that confidence in my abilities, and the confidence in myself that if I commit, I can make this shit happen. So I think that, I mean, I don't want that to sound like too egocentric here, but just like the day that I was like, I'm going to commit to me and my dream and making this happen, and I'm going to commit on every level that I possibly can, and like stop being unsure, stop like wavering, and just say, this is what's going to happen and I'm going to do this shit. Like that was that was probably the best thing I ever did, honestly. And it took a long time to get there. It was not something that happened overnight. It took years and years and years to get there. But as soon as I got there, I think that was the best choice I ever made, or best thing I ever did.
Hell yeah, man. I'm like learning more and more every day. Like it doesn't like feel like it should make sense to trust your gut, essentially, because you're like, how would I know anything? Like, how would I have the experience that, you know, like how would my gut be right, essentially? Yeah. But like more and more and more, the times where I've like overanalyzed something, or I've like trusted just the books or the numbers, and like I reacted and did something off of that led to the wrong decision. And Absolutely. Every like huge big move that worked out was from my gut. And I just started analyzing it less and less like it was like luck, and just more and more like it was like, because you gave yourself the opportunity to lean into that feeling, that was right. And I don't think it's an egocentric thing, dude. I think it's just like a self-awareness thing of like, where can you trust that gut and where can you not? Because there's times where I feel the gut still tells me the right thing, and like there are times where I do still ignore it because I'm like, no, gut, like you think that you know, but like this time, like you straight up know shit about this thing. Like, we need to go talk to some people
right now. That is a bad idea.
That doesn't feel like that's not right now. But then there's other times where like I can have someone sitting there and they're like, dude, you can't do that. You can't afford that. And I'm like,
yeah,
cool, man. All right, I got to find someone else to work with because like we're not cool. Like I'm gonna go do this. Like get out of my face. Like.
For sure.
And sometimes you gotta do it.
That's kind of what it is. It's when I realized, I kind of had to trust myself and kind of commit to myself. So that was the best. That was definitely the best choice I made, I think.
Good, man. And you're doing it. So
thanks.
It's working. Yeah. Keep doing it. What would be a resource that you'd recommend, like the creative full-time living audience? It could be podcasts, could be YouTube video, movie, book. Like, what's one resource you'd recommend? It can be people that are doing the same type of stuff that you like to do, or just creatives as a whole, or business owners as a whole. Like, what's a resource that you're really, really important to you, really big?
That's a really good question. I'm trying to think of a good resource. I feel like my interests are so niche. Like, it's like graffiti, lettering, it's, I don't know, like there's some sites and things that I look to there.
Yeah. It can be that.
Yeah. I mean, sure. Okay. So I guess like I would just probably Google traditional sign writing books. There are a few that are, I don't know the names of them off top, because I got like this collection offline of like these books from like the 1940s and 1930s. Like it's so sick.
I see like that in your art, basics,
dude. You know what I mean? It's like the tried and true. It's like you see these things that, and you're able to go through it and you'll be like, oh, well, this worked until, this worked in 1920 and it still looks cool today. This is tried and true. Awesome. So I would say, if anything, go to the original sources of the things that you're looking to find out about. When I started looking at graffiti, it was like I went straight to 70s inception, like where it was started. I think knowing your history gives you better direction and better an idea of, I guess, purpose as to why you're doing something, what you're carrying forward. So I guess this isn't really answering your question as like an actual resource or like a direct resource, but yeah. I guess if there's anything you're into, search as far back as you possibly can to where these ideas or where this style was kind of started, and knowing where it came from, knowing the basics and kind of working from there, I think, to me, is the most important. I'm trying to think of like,
you don't have to, dude. You don't have to.
Yeah. I said it in the beginning, Subway Art by Martha Cooper and Henry Chalfant, the best ever, shows kind of where it all started. And that's one I would say. But yeah, anything you're really into, go back, learn the history of it, and it really helps give you direction as to kind of why this works, why certain things work, why certain things don't. I think that's kind of the best way to kind of attack anything you might be interested in.
Yeah. And it like gives you different, they're like I the way that I thought of that when you said it is like, I can look at music theory as like a way for things mechanically, like what is it about this writing that makes people be that way with it? Why? But like, I don't want to think that all the time. You know what I mean? But it does help me. And it's the same way with like,
absolutely.
Anything like that. Like you, like understanding like why these letters have lasted that long. Like you'll see it, you'll start seeing patterns of like, why did this in 1920 work? Why in 2020 does it still work? And what are people finding appealing about it? And how did they use it in different contexts through that time? And then you'll see through their choices why it's being chosen to do that thing. And then you can apply it how you want to based off of your own style. And like that is helpful.
Absolutely. You know? And I think extremely important now with the current day and age where we have the, social media and access to these trends that come out, and these trends happen and they're like blasted in the face with them, and they're new and they may or may not hold weight over time. So it's good to know what's really going to work. And then you can kind of look at these trends with the eye of knowing what I'd be like, seeing, I don't know if that's really going to last long, or be like, oh, that's cool. That's an adaptation based off of blank, and be like, that's cool, but yeah, I think it's very, very, very key and important to know the history behind whatever you're doing.
Definitely, man. That's such a like super, super true in art. It's like really easy to fall in love with some of the trends because they're like the coolest shit ever.
Oh my gosh,
but sometimes like you just lean in too hard and you're like, oh my God,
That's for sure.
Last question is going to be the easiest on you, my man, to end this out. And that is just, where do people find your stuff? If people are into it, they want to come out and check out your art or whatever, where do they find you and your stuff, dude?
For sure. Well, on all socials, it's Ryanwritesonthings, one word. It's try to keep it pretty straightforward there. Yeah.
I love it, dude. I really do.
So it's Ryanwritesonthings on Instagram, and then Ryanwritesonthings.com. I don't have any of the other ones. I'm just down to those two. But outside of that, I mean, you can kind of see on my website and on my Instagram where I currently have work, but trying to show and exhibit as much as possible given COVID, and then, painting murals as much as I can. So, all around the East Coast right now, trying to work my way out west at some point soon. If everything works out well here. Excuse me. And yeah, that's pretty much where you can find me. I guess the most up to date is on Instagram and then on the website.
Cool. Yeah. I was going to say, like, if it wasn't COVID times, I'd pack up my truck and we could go out and go on this Portland drive that I'm going to do sometime and hit up everything.
That'd be awesome.
Maybe I could post that list. Can I post that list that you gave me that has like the 10 in Portland?
They're all still running. I think maybe Space Gallery, I think, is down.
Okay.
But there's a new one. There's actually 2 new ones since I sent that to you, so I can send those over to you.
Okay. So people out there, I will do my little drive about, and then I will report back, and I'll give you a list out there. And I don't know how long you'll listen out, where like you might be listening, this podcast episode's super old, but check it out and I'll put out a list and for people that are hanging out looking for some COVID stuff to do in Portland, go hit up all this art,
Yeah.
All right. Cool, man. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for listening on Instagram Live, and thank you to anyone that's listened to the episode as a podcast episode in the future of this time.
Thanks so much, dude. I appreciate you having me on here.